Hey, Sarah. How you
Hey
doing?
Andy, how's it going? Good, good.
Good, good. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us for our first ever YouTube live stream session. This is going
Happy to
to
be here.
thank you so much. This is going to be excellent. Today we have Sarah Cipkar from ADUsearch.ca. Sarah is a housing advocate, developer, and also the lead behind the tool ADUsearch.ca, which is an incredible free tool that anyone in Ontario and actually in many places across Canada can go punch in their address and determine at a high level whether or not they are feasible, whether or not their site is feasible for a backyard suite. So an ADU, which is what it's officially called. People who follow our channel know that we call them garden suites. In Toronto, they're officially called garden suites, but basically they're the same thing. So it's a detached structure with its own facilities in the backyard. All right. So before we jump into the tool here, Sarah, maybe if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the ADU space and how you came up with the idea of ADU search, and then really maybe a background on the development on the process of ADU search?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. So I'm here in Windsor, Ontario. So in late 2019, early 2020, I started actually toying around with the idea of building my own detached ADU. So my own unit in the back of my property. Windsor actually passed their bylaws fairly early compared to the rest of the province. So all of a sudden COVID hit and I got excited about building it. I needed a project, something to do. My contract at work had come to an end. So I broke ground in August of 2020 for my own 430 square foot ADU. You could just, if people are interested, you can check it out at my website, Cipkar.ca. But that actually really got me thinking about how much potential we actually have in residential lots to develop these units. And when I started kind of poking around, I realized there wasn't really a lot of good information. Like for the average person going to the City of Windsor zoning bylaws, or any municipal zoning bylaws, figuring out how all of those things apply to your lot, it's you need to hire a planner, an architect. Is quite difficult. And I realized though that if we really wanted to empower homeowners, the average person to be able to build more of these, we kind of needed to make that information a bit more accessible. So one day, just over a beer with a friend, we were kind of just,
It's always
talking.
over a beer.
Yeah, always over a beer. We're just talking about ideas. And like, imagine if you could map the buildable areas of people's backyards, like really get a sense of, what's possible there. And so we decided to apply for the Housing Supply Challenge. And that was through CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing. So they have a few rounds. This was the first data-driven round. And basically, we just applied. We thought we'll develop a proof of concept in Windsor, Ontario, see what happens. We were successful in getting that initial, seed funding, which I was surprised about. And then all of a sudden, we worked with a web development partner here locally, developed a proof of concept, and then CMHC liked what we were doing, and they funded us to scale nationally. So as you mentioned, we're in 30 cities across the country, the big ones being Toronto, Hamilton, Calgary, Ottawa. No BC yet. We had some data problems that we're still working through. So the goal is just to really kind of mobilize the potential of residential lots across Canada. So that's kind of where it all came from, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for giving us that background. And, really, you guys are in for a treat today because I've been playing with this tool and I've been just totally geeking out on it because I love this stuff. But there's not a lot of very useful information that's being produced by the municipalities. Like there's a lot of good information if you really know what you're doing when you go into the interactive zoning maps, if you go into the bylaw documents, into the official plans. But your tool is just so sleek. It's so user friendly, and you touched on a really good point, which is that you want to make everyday homeowners be able to access the information and based on that information, make a decision as to whether it's suitable for them, right? So a lot of our audience are investors, but there are also a lot of homeowners that want to be able to create these, for themselves, for family members, or to bring in a little bit of extra income. So your tool is just really great for that end user that wants to be able to build these additional ADUs at a very grassroots level. So this is great, very exciting stuff. Yeah, so without further ado, I will let you share your screen, and then we're going to right into it.
I'll jump in. I'll do the screen share now. And just to piggyback off of what you were saying, this tool can be really for both the homeowner, but also the policymaker or the investor as well. Like, we have a bunch of different users that could use this site. So I just shared my screen, but I think
I'm going to pull that up right now.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so this is the landing page.
Have you on the screen? Oh, sorry. Give me 1 second. Let me remove.
It was coming up on my end, so I don't know if it was for you. Yep, there we go. Am I good to go ahead? I think so. I can't hear you, Andy. I don't know if you're still there. Okay, I'm going to keep going.
Okay, yes, please go. Please go.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so this is just the landing page. Pretty straightforward. It allows you to select your province and then your city. We thought we'd do Brantford today. But as you can see, there's a bunch of different cities across Canada. So essentially where you land is a municipal homepage. It's just really a snapshot of all of the information, basically how many properties are suitable for an ADU. So before I get too far down this garden path here, our team developed a model that essentially categorized each of the residential lots, red, yellow, or green, in this case, light green or dark green. And I'll kind of explain the difference in a second. But essentially what we did was we just decided to take the tally of all those, or the total, I should say, of all those numbers, and give people a snapshot right off the bat. So before I go too much in the homepage here, there's a lot of information. One of the things being we created a hypothetical set of bylaw system called the National Minimum Regulation. You're welcome to check that out. There's a whole report there. Additional municipal data maps and just some partners and things like that. So if people want to poke around or if they have questions, feel free to, I guess, put it in the chat. We can go back here, but I kind of want to get to the property search. So you have to accept all the terms here. Legally, we vetted this and we needed those terms and conditions, but it brings you essentially to the map of the city. And then I'm just going to type in an address here that I guess Andy was poking around on before. But essentially we typed in 349 West. So if you click on it, it brings you to the lot. And when you can see in the sidebar here, it's being cut off a little bit on the live stream. I'm not sure if there's a way around that.
Can you hear me, Sarah?
I'm just seeing like the screen is cutting off a bit.
Okay, can you hear me, Sarah? Yep.
I can, yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, my apologies about that. It looks like this live stream tool is kind of cutting that portion off. But essentially,
I'm just wondering, like, hold on, let me see if I can maybe, like,
can you shrink it a little more? Okay.
Well, if I shrink it like that, then you can't really.
Well, you'll be able to see kind of half of it, and
yeah, then it's just kind of small there. So that's okay. I mean, I can try that for a little bit. So essentially, the sidebar right now is just like zoomed in on, but just because so it doesn't cut off as much. But essentially, what happens is when you click on the lot, which you can see right there is a dark green. It essentially tells you it's suitable for detached. It gives you a rationale. So in this case, it meets all the basic zoning, building type, and size requirements. It gives you the lot information, so the total lot area, the size of the main dwelling, the existing secondary building if there is one, and then the minimum and maximum size of an ADU. So that is based on all of the municipalities' local zoning bylaws. So what our team did was essentially create a standardized input system where we could categorize all the different zoning bylaws that would affect a lot in terms of an additional dwelling unit development. And then we used GIS to actually map that buildable area and then do the calculations for what's the minimum and what's the maximum size ADU that you can do there. So that's all information that's in the sidebar. Really what we think that does is it enables, again, the average person to be able to say, okay, yep, this lot qualifies, or nope, this lot doesn't have the, X, Y, or Z kind of criteria. To be able to build a detached ADU. So I'll just quickly go through the parking. Parking was really hard because there was no good way to account for it. So we actually are making it a user-generated input, essentially, where, it says this lot requires a parking space. Do you know if you can, does it adhere to the municipal requirements? If you click no, it just kind of gives you a little bit of a warning just to let people know that, if it doesn't meet the local parking requirements, you might have to contact the municipality. There's additional considerations. And these are things that we work directly with the municipalities on. Basically, any information that they thought was relevant that we weren't able to account for in our tool. So you can see here, detached ADUs have a maximum height requirement. So it just gives you kind of a little bit more information around, what's possible on your lot. From there, you go to next steps. It links you right to the planning department. The data source, where things are coming from, and then we're going to have industry partners and opportunities for people to sponsor the tool here as well. And so one of our partners so far has been MPAC. They've been really great in terms of supporting the tool and helping us get the data that we needed. So that's a green lot. Andy, I'm going to quickly go to a yellow lot here. Just keep going.
Sure. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so if I go to the yellow lot here, you'll notice it says suitable for internal or attached. So if you're familiar with the ADU world, you know that you can have both an internal and attached or a detached ADU. And now with Ontario's Bill 23, you can actually do both by right. Even if a municipality hasn't passed their zoning bylaws yet, that's on the horizon for a lot of municipalities. But we made this a category if, for example, there wasn't enough size to have a minimum sized ADU. So for example, this one says, our calculations indicate that a detached ADU on this lot would exceed the maximum lot coverage allowed for accessory buildings. This means that you may not be allowed to add additional structures. So when you look further into this, let's say you go to the lot information here, you can see the existing secondary building is almost 600 square feet. So I would hazard a guess, I don't know what the lot coverage requirement is off the top of my head. I'd have to go check the Brantford zoning bylaw, but essentially that secondary building is a little bit too big to be able to have a detached ADU. So that kind of cues, the user that maybe you have to, tear down that secondary building, whether it's a garage or a shed, or maybe you can convert it. In this case, it's almost 600 square feet, so it's quite large. You could convert it if it was a garage, but it just kind of says that you're probably not going to be able to build a second detached ADU because you're
So I know that in Brantford, the lot coverage percentage is 10%. So that looks about, you're probably kind of at the borderline if I had to eyeball that. And, that's something that is probably a concern with the existing accessory building, right?
Okay, gotcha. So it's, is it 10% for accessory?
Correct. Yeah, 10% for accessory structures, which includes any, existing garages and any future ADUs.
Okay, gotcha. Right. So that would mean that in this case, it would be like adding the minimum size and the existing secondary building and saying it's too much lot coverage. So that's kind of a rundown there. And again, if anyone's watching, if they have any questions, you can actually email info@ADUsearch.ca, and our whole team, we have like a tracker and we go through and we answer any questions, make sure that the site is accurate. Part of the issue is communicating the rationale as to why, this particular lot, essentially it failed at a gateway. Like the way that the model is that we basically do a check of all of the different zoning bylaws. And so if it doesn't pass one of them, the rationale spits out like, this is why. And so if you notice something or it doesn't seem right, we're able to kind of amend our back end, or even sometimes it's the comment. The comment doesn't clearly communicate what we're trying to do. So, and each municipality is a bit different. So we do have like a standard comment database for all municipalities, but then some municipalities, the comment is just a little bit off. So we really wanted to arm people with as much information as possible. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or notice anything. we're ongoing improvement all the time. So,
Well, thanks for
so
bringing
that
that up,
was,
Sarah.
go ahead. Oh, Andy, you're on mute there. I can see.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Sarah. And I just wanted to point out to the folks that are on right now, and then also for future folks that will be watching this, is that the information is based on the best information you were able to get, based on the current bylaws as it's written. It's constantly evolving, and some municipalities may not provide the full information. Sometimes there's contradictory information. So it's really just to let people know is that this is ongoing. Don't rely on this information 100% to, definitely not for any real estate transactions, but it really gives you an idea as to what to expect for, a lot, potentially something that you have. And then, it gives you an idea if it's something that you're looking at, a particular property and the acquisition, whether it's, something that, needs further evaluation, or, it's something that definitely is a no-go for now, right? But
Yep.
this is really just the starting point, and you have to do your due diligence with the city or town.
Yep. Yeah, you couldn't have said it better, Andy. It's we're not meant to solve everybody's problems. There are a lot of things that we don't account for, like site servicing, hydro lines. There's a lot of things like that our tool doesn't account for. We really just try to apply the zoning bylaws to the lot as best as we can, but there are limitations with the geospatial data. We have one town, one city that the building footprint file was just really out of date. It's like almost 10 years old, and there's a whole new subdivisions that aren't captured in the tool. But that's the best building footprint file that the city had, so we decided to go with it. But we just put a disclaimer that it affects about 25% of the lots in the city. So we're kind of working with just the best data that we have as well. And so to your point, this is not it's the starting point. It helps you filter or funnel what you're looking for, gives you an indication, but it doesn't substitute for any sort of professional kind of work in terms of planners or consulting with the municipality as well. So
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah. And I did want to just point out a red lot here as well. So this one here, it says not suitable. And it just says the main dwelling unit is not the correct building type and does not allow for ADUs at this time. So a lot of municipalities across Ontario actually have restrictions around what buildings can have ADUs. Not all. So for example, Toronto doesn't have a building type restriction. You can have a detached ADU with most building types around in Toronto, whereas cities like Windsor or Brantford in this case, it's restricted to single detached, townhomes, row homes. And I think that's actually it for Windsor. I don't know Brantford off the top of my head. Andy, you might know a little bit more. But I was just thinking that, if it doesn't have the correct building type, let's say this is like a multiplex or something like that, it might not actually qualify. So I always tell people that if you get this rationale, it says the main dwelling unit is not the correct building type. Mm-hmm. Go to your MPAC tax assessment, because this is directly from them, and then verify what building types are allowed with your zoning bylaw, with the zoning bylaws. So, yeah, again, not all cities have this restriction, but some do in Ontario. So, okay, so I think that's it in terms of there. I don't see any light green ones. I'm just going to quickly kind of pop out here, see if I can see any light green. I know Brantford does have some. Yeah, so if you look here, these are lighter green. So if I click on this one right here, and then I'm just going to go back to making this small again so you can see it. So it says potentially suitable. And the reason why we created this category is that we found that there was lots that met all of the physical, like zoning bylaw kind of criteria, but then they had additional kind of permitting or consideration. So in this case, this lot is located in an area that is likely in a flood zone. So we were able to overlay flood zone mapping to be able to signal to the user that, hey, you might need an additional permit here, or you might have restrictions based on natural hazards. For example, in Windsor, Ontario, we have a lot of flood areas, and we need an additional permit with the Conservation Authority. So we wanted to flag those things because it's like technically it's possible, but there's additional considerations. So we flag those as light green. So if you do go to additional considerations here, actually it comes up right in the rationale. So it says that right there. So
Yeah, that's a really great point that you bring up, Sarah, because sometimes we get so caught up in certain things and certain criteria, such as lot size and access and things like that. And we might miss something big, such as the property is in a flood zone and you can't do an attached ADU, like a basement ADU, or you can't do a detached one for whatever
Right.
reason. So we always say to people, make sure you check that it complies, obviously, with the zoning. But if there's any sort of physical constraints, such as a floodplain, that you're aware of that. Sometimes there are districts where there's maybe a homeowners association where ADUs have been
Right.
um, you know for basically it's been prohibited, and those are things that you want to verify with your city,
Yeah.
and become familiar with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to that point, the municipality is really the next point of contact. If you're if you're serious about it and you want to head in that direction, you can see here, for example, like you can see the buildable area and you get an idea of what's possible there. So basically, it's important to just then go check with your municipality. And then get a qualified designer or architect planner to be able to go forward from there. All municipalities have different restrictions, different bylaws. It was a big challenge to figure out how to standardize all of them, so it's important to just make sure you check there.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So I don't know if you want me to jump in quickly. I can just quickly show, if I go back to the Brantford Find My City, I just quickly thought I'd show the neighborhood search just so people can see it as well.
Sure, please do.
So this is just these are just aggregated up to the census dissemination areas, and essentially that's like roughly a population of, I think it's like 500 to 700 residents. And what you do, I think that's what it is. Off the top of my head, I could be misspeaking there. And basically what happens is when you click on that area, actually you can't see it again, so I'm just gonna make it small again. So when you click on that area, it gives you a sense of the potential for ADUs at a higher, I guess, at that more aggregate level. So in this case, 75 properties are suitable with no restrictions, whereas 3 are not suitable. You click on the one next to it, it gives you a sense that 9 is the most commonly occurring type of lot. And again, it's just really, it gives people more of that macro sense. We decided to develop this part of the tool more so for even like the policymakers, but it could also be used for the private sector in terms of, figuring out what parts of cities are more eligible to have ADUs. Like, for example, there's a lot of yellow lots in here, which would indicate likely that it's probably smaller lots, that kind of thing. There's a lot of red in here. So we don't have necessarily all the tools and to be able to do analysis. Like whoever's looking at this, you'll know your city. Like when I look at the city of Windsor, I'm like, oh yeah, that neighborhood makes a lot of sense that it would be mostly red, because like, for example, my neighborhood is all red because I live in a more dense neighborhood with a lot more like apartment buildings, not a lot of opportunity for ADUs. So it just gives you a sense of that. And so I would encourage people to play around with this if you're interested in some of those like more macro kind of numbers as well.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks for clarifying.
And just really quickly, we do have a data exports page, and I just wanted to share that as well because it actually has all of that information within there that people could actually download. So it gives you, information on the package, and they can download that information at that more aggregate level. Again, this is for more like the policy wonks or the researchers, but it could be again used for builders as well who might want more information about their city. With that, we do have the resource center here. I'll quickly touch on. We tried to organize it as best as possible. If there's different, kind of, if you go to the financial incentives, we did our best to showcase all the ones that we've kind of come across. Any FAQs, so questions about the tool, that kind of thing, and then glossary. So if you're not sure on a word that we're using, we did our best to kind of get those in there as well. And I think that would be it for like a high level overview. There's a lot more in there, but I think that's about it. I don't know, Andy, if you have any questions or thoughts you want me to touch on anything else.
No, you know what? I think that was excellent, Sarah. Thank you so much. I think that's enough information for folks to say, hey, you know what? I got enough to chew on for a little while. And we encourage everyone really just to go in there, create an account, and yeah, just play around with it, because
Yeah.
that's really how you're going to learn.
You actually don't need an account. You
Oh,
just need
no.
to
Okay.
no, it's all it's all free. And part of the housing supply challenge was like using making it publicly accessible. So our goal moving forward is to have it open and available for everybody. We think it's really important because, even in the top cities that have, a couple hundred detached ADUs, like the possibilities are enormous. Like I'll just quickly touch on Toronto, for example. If you go to there's like 200 and almost 70,000 lots that are eligible for detached ADUs. And then there's even more that are, potentially suitable, and then also for internal. So there's a lot of potential. And I know that municipalities are not tapping them that much. They're not getting that many permits. So
Yeah. I think we're definitely still early on. So,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So what I will do is, we'll get to kind of some general discussion about ADUs as well. And we are also going to get to what you mentioned earlier about opportunities to take part and become a sponsor if you are in the ADU space as a professional.
Sure.
So we'll touch on that. But before we do that, is it okay maybe we get to some questions from some of the audience?
Sure. Yeah, I can't really see them, so I'll leave.
Yeah, no, I can see them. So what I'll do is I'll read them out.
Sure.
I'll see how many there are, and I'll select some good ones here. All right. So let's see here. So this first question we have is, what is the difference between the total buildable area and the minimum/maximum ADU size?
Right. Okay. Great question. So when you, I don't know if you want to share my screen again, just quickly.
Sure.
Might be easier to do it that way. Okay, so I'm in Toronto now. So can you see that? I'm just going to go back a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So in this case here, if you go to lot information, the total buildable area is all of this white diagonal line here. So it's basically the setbacks applied to the lot. So I don't know the setbacks off the top of my head for Toronto. They could be like 4 feet roughly. Like in Windsor, it's a 4-foot setback. So
it's around there. Yeah.
It's
It also
around
depends on the lot frontage, but 4 feet is around. It's
right.
Around
So basically, the buildable area is that whole white diagonal lined box there. And then the minimum and maximum size ADU are the calculations that go into how big of an ADU you can have. So they're independent of the buildable area. So for example, minimum is 14 meters squared, which is roughly Ontario building code for like a studio apartment. The maximum comes up here as around 60 meters squared. And that is basically all of the different size restrictions. So for example, again, I'm really familiar with Windsor's, but not as much Toronto's. But I know, for example, it can't be bigger than the main dwelling. It can only be, 10% of the lot coverage. It can only be, X, Y, and Z. And so we applied all of those calculations to get to basically what the maximum size. That maximum size, as you can see there, is 60 meters squared, whereas the buildable area is almost 191 meters squared. So it's basically like the box of the ADU footprint on the buildable area. Does that make sense, Andy? I don't know if I'm.
Yes, no, I think that makes sense as to how big the unit can be and then where it can be built.
Yeah, exactly. And if you wanted to, if anyone was interested in doing this, you can actually turn off the buildable areas. So you can see the lot as is. You can also, turn off the residential buildings. So let's say you wanted to just take a look at, more like this kind of a look. You don't see all the clutter of the buildable areas or anything like that. But if you wanted to add them back in, then you can add that back in as well. So it's just a way to visualize it differently. But yeah, the buildable areas is like the whole area where you can build, whereas minimum maximum is based on the size calculations based on the bylaws.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's see here. The next one. We had one person ask about Durham, and what I'll do is I will answer that based on what we see here. So right now for Durham, I see Clarington, I see Oshawa, and that's what we have so far. I mean, Peterborough is not part of Durham, but it is in the eastern part of the GTA. up in the Kawartha Lakes area. So I don't know. Do you have in the GTA? Are there any that are not currently here that you see as being on there pretty soon?
Yeah, I think, for example, like the GTA, like off the top of my head, I remember we weren't able to map. Well, here's the thing. A lot of the GTA outside of Toronto don't have detached ADU bylaws yet. And so we made a decision to wait on some of those, but now with Bill 23, they should be coming soon. So we did map some of them, for example, like Mississauga. So when you go to it, it all comes up as yellow and red. There's no green yet. So if your city is not featured, feel free to reach out at info@ADUsearch. But we tried to map as much of the GTA as possible. But then if they didn't have the detached bylaws, we didn't. So like I'm thinking like Markham, Vaughan. I think some of those don't come up yet.
Yeah. Yeah, someone did mention city of Kawartha Lakes region. I know that they have a very progressive policy for ADUs up there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we just met with them actually. We
oh,
just met
excellent.
With them. So yeah. So there's been a bunch of municipalities that have reached out actually. So we're kind of figuring out how to prioritize them and get them on the tool over the next couple of months. So Kawartha Lakes was one of them actually.
Okay. Yeah. So if you guys have any additional cities that you know where the policy has been set and it's not on the list, that website is info@ADUsearch.ca.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll do two more questions. Sarah,
Sure.
is that okay?
Yep.
Right.
See one at the bottom here that says how accurate. I have a big lot in Brampton.
You want to try that one?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say I would, have to look at I'd actually be curious if this person is listening, what the rationale is. Because it's not always about lot size. There's other zoning bylaw factors that come into play. So I don't know if it's coming up as red. It might be red or yellow. I'd be curious to see what the rationale is. If this person is listening, they want to share it, or they're welcome to at info.
Do you have Brampton here? You do have Brampton.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good point that you bring up, Sarah. Sometimes it depends on the rationale. Like for example, I know Richmond Hill, they have their policy set for ADUs, but it's the size of the units. I think it's something like maximum 400 square feet, full stop, right?
Right.
So in a lot of cases, it just doesn't make sense for people to build because there's so much cost to building new construction, with a full foundation and services, that you're just not able to get a lot out of that. And, that could be policies of the city to try to kind of limit certain types of development. I won't get into that, but yeah, the rationale is very important.
And just to add to that too, if it's a vacant lot, if it doesn't have an existing building already, it'll come up as red. And the reason for that is, and we debated this internally with our team, so you can see a bit how the sausage is made here, I guess. Technically, additional or accessory dwelling units have to have a main building. You can't just build them on their own. They're different. They're not the same as tiny houses. And that's like a clarification. So our tool is really specifically targeting additional dwelling units to the main residential. So in theory, if you have a vacant lot, you could actually have a total of 3 units. You could have a single family unit. You can have an internal unit, let's say in the basement, and then you could also have a detached, most municipalities now. But we still classified it as red. And actually that was brought to us actually by a municipality who was like, we don't like that categorization. We want it to be green, even though the lot is vacant. We want people to know that they can build a new house and a detached ADU. So they actually challenged it. This was actually in Alberta. So our team kind of did like some internal soul searching about it because we were like, well, we're technically correct, but maybe it's better. So we're reconsidering it a bit. So I do see his address here. So
yeah, do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll share your screen and maybe
it's 158 Drive. Okay. So I'm going to just make it. Well, actually, if you guys see it? Did I type it in right?
Let's see here. 158 Hannah Hill.
Yeah, it's not coming up. No, it's right here. No, sorry, it is right here. So okay, so you can see it there. I'm just going to make it smaller again so everyone can see it. It says our calculations indicate a detached ADU on this lot would exceed the maximum lot coverage requirement for all buildings. So essentially your main dwelling, again, I don't know what the maximum lot coverage is. I'd have to go back to the bylaw and look. But if you look at what you'd have to do is your your lot area there, take that, whatever the maximum lot coverage is, usually it's around like 45, 50, 55%. I don't know what it is in Brampton off the top of my head. But the main dwelling area is likely taking up too much space. Not
Yeah.
entirely sure.
Just at a high level, me looking at it, having assessed a bunch of different properties, this particular property, there doesn't seem to be a lot of separation between the lot line and the rear face of the property.
Right.
And something like this is not to say that it can't be done, but most likely there would likely be variances involved in order to put an additional unit, because there are separation requirements.
For sure. That's a good point actually too, because it is a corner lot. It might have a deeper setback as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that went into that. So again, if you're not sure about it, or if you want to still do it, definitely contact your city and let them know. They might just say you might need a minor variance to get, relief for X, Y, or Z. And then, you go through that process, and sometimes it's not too onerous. It usually is pretty smooth. Just depends on the municipality. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So maybe what we'll do there is we're going to pause with the questions, and I want to just discuss a little bit about kind of what's next for you.
Yeah.
Maybe before we do that, you want to just mention the potential partnerships that ADUsearch has, and what kind of opportunities for professionals in the space?
Sure. Yeah, I think my screen's still sharing, so I'll keep on that, because I'm actually just going to go. If you go to, so I'll just go to, like, let's say I'll go to Windsor's, because it's easy for me. What we're looking at doing is having a little section here for industry partners, essentially, to be able to actually, it's going to be moved up to be right underneath these numbers here. So it'll be kind of in this section here. And essentially what we want to do is have industry partners who are ADU builders, architects, planners, maybe you're a real estate agent or investor that want to advertise. And basically it's a way for us to have to generate some revenue and be sustainable. Our CMHC funding comes up at the end of the month, so we are pivoting and looking towards, how can we keep this tool in operation. And so we're reaching out both for municipal partnerships, so we're looking at municipalities to partner and help sponsor the tool, but also the private sector. And really it's to cover the data costs and just the costs of maintaining it. So I don't know how many people are familiar, but data costs in Ontario are actually quite expensive. Getting everything that we need for this was, we are really appreciative to CMHC for that funding, but it is coming to an end, as I mentioned. So if there is any interest in sponsoring, you can reach out to us. And like I said, it'll be similar to this section here, but it'll just be kind of moved up and a little bit bigger, and it'll also be click through as well. So that's just something to highlight as well.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for that, Sarah. So yeah, I mean, if you're an industry professional, as Sarah mentioned, if you're a designer, if you're a contractor, realtor, maybe in the lending space where ADUs are going to be of interest to you, then this is something that you probably want to be involved with, especially that there was a CMHC backing. This tool is getting a lot of traction, and this is really the only thing out there in Canada right now. So I foresee that this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be using. So there's definitely that opportunity. So if you are interested and you're an industry professional that you want to partner with Sarah in ADUsearch, you can reach out to her, info@ADUsearch.ca. If you have any feedback regarding the tool, if there's any issues, feel free to email that as well. She does have a team working with her, but please don't message her asking for her to review properties for you. That's better off directing it to the municipalities. All right. And then, I'm sure that once you get familiar with the tool, you'll be able to kind of have a lot of those questions answered. All right. Okay. So I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and maybe just, ask you some general questions about ADUs. And, you've been in this journey for a while now, and I've been following you online and seen what you've done. It's incredible stuff. Maybe I'll just ask you, what are some of the challenges that you've had, with your development of ADUs in Windsor?
Yeah, I mean, my other hat that I wear is I was doing consulting work for actual ADU builds, so I understand the on the ground realities of how much effort sometimes it takes to get these things built. Often a lot of municipalities, these are really new, especially in Ontario. So it takes a lot. I have battle wounds from going to war with the city over I'll say 3% of the lot coverage, stuff like that, where there's a lot of challenges and uphill, and for the average person, whether you're an investor or a homeowner, sometimes those things can make or break your project. Like I've seen somebody who put $8,000 worth of design fees to the architect walk away from a project because it just became too risky and the city wasn't being easy to deal with. So the challenges I still think are in that permitting process. And so, our tool is designed to help filter it and get a good idea, but there's still a lot of challenges in the actual kind of process of it, in terms of making sure you have all the moving parts, the financing, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, been there, and it's a lot. So hopefully this tool is solving one of those problems, I guess.
Yeah, oh, you're definitely a pioneer. The question that we get often is financing, right? That's always kind of tricky. I know that you've had some success with the financing side. Do you want to share any advice to people, whether through your own experience or through some of the other homeowners that you've consulted with in the past from the financing side of things?
Yeah, I can speak to a bit of my own experience and then maybe extrapolate to other people. I worked with the credit union, Libro Credit Union. I give them a big shout out because they really do, they did work with me at a time when I probably wouldn't have been qualified from any other bank. I had gotten a pre-approval prior to March 2020, but then with COVID happening, and my contract ended and wasn't renewed, and so I didn't have a steady source of income to be able to show the bank that I could cover the debt service ratio for the new build. However, they put together like a profile, and they were able to adjudicate locally, which is a big deal. A lot of national banks, they have a process, they have a system, and it's like a yes or no. But they were able to have some of their team members advocate for that financing with different, collateral, things like that. So I was able to refinance my whole property through a construction mortgage. So that I don't know that I would have been able to do that with any other bank. I mean, there's probably other credit unions that maybe would have done it, but I would say try some of the smaller credit unions. Maybe you have the ability to pull equity out of your home if you're sitting on it for a while. Financing though is a challenge with the interest rates, with everything like that. So I strongly suggest just try to save as much as you can, do what you can, but I would say working with some of the not the big banks, the smaller banks would maybe be better.
Yeah, and I think because we're still so early on in this, that most of the lenders don't recognize the value.
Yeah.
But I would say in a couple of years, when they do see that these are very valuable products and great housing options for a lot of people, and that they are revenue generating assets, that they will jump on board. But for the most part, right now, a lot of people are self-financing, through HELOCs, where it's going to be a lot more cost effective than sometimes the fees that are associated with construction financing, and some hoops that you have to jump over, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I did, I just kept saying, I'm building another unit on my property. I was like, imagine it's attached, but it's not, because it was like so foreign of a concept. I was one of the first in Windsor. I'm like, it's like I'm building a garage, but with a residential unit in it. So I would like try to explain it in a way, and people would be like, you could do that. And, some municipalities, some people are more familiar with them than others. So don't be discouraged if, they haven't heard of them or they don't know what you're talking about. I just tried to, I guess, forge ahead despite that. So.
Yeah, great. One last question.
Sure.
If you're building a new ADU today, what are some of the things that you would do differently? And it's something that you and I chatted about at the National Home Show. It's
yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember like all the things that we talked about. You know, I really actually I really enjoyed the opportunity I had to work with the builder. They were really friendly and explained all the parts of the process. And I think that like overall, I wouldn't do too much that's different. Um, Trying to remember, some of the pitfalls that you can get into. I think one of the things is that it can seem really overwhelming, and that there's all these moving parts and there's all of these things that are happening, and you have to line up your financing that has to come in with the time with the building permit, and then you have to have, and if you have a good contractor, they're subcontracting. But if you're doing if you're being the GC, then you have to line all these things up. And I kind of just kept reminding myself that, like, it's like what's that saying where it's like you're biting an elephant, or like one bite at I can't remember it. Yeah, it's like, one thing at a time. And I just kind of kept that mindset. The day would bring new challenges. One of the things with my ADU, that was kind of a game time decision, was actually adding more windows. And I think that when you're thinking about a small space, you're thinking about your lot, really make sure that it's the right design for your space. I didn't think about all those things. And then when it was actually being built, I had the freedom and the flexibility to say, actually, we need that window to be there. Can we do that? I took out a closet actually as well. And so I was really hands-on, and I wanted the design to be really good. So yeah. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. I can't remember exactly what I would do differently, but
yeah, we talked about. Do you remember? Sorry, go on.
No. Remind me. I don't remember.
Okay,
now.
remember we were in the accessibility area.
Oh, yes. I would have made it accessible. So it's all that's a great point. So it's all one floor. Mine's 430 square feet. I could have easily made it so that it was wheelchair accessible, so that the doorways were a little bit larger. That there was the clearance that was needed for accessibility, all those things. And I didn't even think about it. So if you are building one, it does just make it a little bit more marketable. But also, if you're building it for older family members, why not make it more accessible? You're pulling something up there.
I can't here, I'm trying to like scroll down here. It doesn't seem to work, but
yeah, this is a picture of just the top though. I can
is it, do you see it?
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the barbecue that my tenant, we decided to add a barbecue that we were going to share, because my house is like to the right there, but then neither of us ever use this barbecue, and we realized it's really annoying, so we're just going to get rid of it. But we put the barbecue in there.
Did those pergolas work?
You know what? I wanted it originally to be covered, but I couldn't because of the lot coverage. It technically counted towards the lot coverage, and I wasn't able to. So I made it a pergola so I could cover it later. Yeah. So the intention is actually, even maybe this year, me and my tenant is actually a friend, and he has a ton of plants. And so he's talked about like filling it in essentially kind of like a greenhouse, but I don't know, it has to look good still. So we haven't quite worked out a design yet, but yeah, he has some plants actually that grow over top of it, so it looks really nice. So we're trying to figure out how we can enclose it a little bit so he gets a little bit more seasonal use out of it.
Right. Yeah, no, this is awesome. I want to respect your time, Sarah. Sure. But before we end it, I just wanted to bring up what your next venture is. We worked on that workshop that you put together, and were kind enough to invite me to participate in it, and maybe just give people some ideas as to some of the things that you have going on in terms of the next stage of potential funding with CMHC.
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned, we're kind of doing a bit of a pivot in the sense that we're trying to figure out how we can make ADUsearch sustainable, but also, through my own, real life ADU experience, I realized we're only really solving one problem for people, just like the question of, is my lot suitable or not? But in the ADU development journey, there's all of these different problems to solve. You have to figure out things around like servicing and like design and financing and like all of these different components. And it's actually quite, it can be overwhelming, for the average homeowner, but even for investors, like there's a lot of moving parts there. So we decided that we wanted to pivot and create a better platform for the user, having a better user experience where they can get actually even more information. So we're calling it ADU Build is the direction that we're headed in. And essentially we want to use kind of like ADU search as a starting point, but then really expand into helping a homeowner get through all of those process, make direct contact with builders and industry partners in their area, and then eventually have it so that, there could even be like a seamless kind of communication and facilitation of an ADU build. So let's say you like a modular build, you can check if your lot is eligible. You could even test if that modular build, the footprint of that fits on that buildable area, and get a sense of like, okay, you know what, I actually really like this build. It fits on my lot. And then you can go through the platform to be able to actually, whether it's order it, have it installed, all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at things like that. We haven't, for sure solidified a direction and a trajectory, but we really want to help homeowners, build more detached ADUs, and also kind of help the industry scale up, because right now there's a big barrier because all municipalities are different, provinces are different, et cetera. So we want to try to smooth out some of those rough edges for people.
Yeah, no, that's such a much needed tool. And it's one thing, like you said, to be able to search and see if it's feasible, but there's so many moving parts. There's so many different stakeholders involved. And, if there is a tool where you can bring in all the stakeholders and also some sort of a project management system that can help homeowners be able to go through the process a little bit easier, I think that's going to be very, very invaluable. So, it's very exciting to see.
Thanks. Yeah. And a lot of like on the ground work in terms of project management, and there's always going to be a need for like those custom things and all that. But really, what we're seeing in California, if people are tuned into the ADU world, detached ADUs and like modular building are now like 10 to 20% of all new housing starts. They just have like, they've exploded over the last 7 years. So I think Ontario is on that cusp, and so we're trying to, figure out how we can be a part of it and connect with the industry in meaningful ways. So.
Incredible. Yeah. And you definitely are the pioneer of it. So you're kind of leading this. So I appreciate it. Very excited to see what you have coming up next. And we'll end it there. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Taking part. And thank you everyone for taking part in our first live stream. If you do want to see more of these, please click the thumbs up and subscribe. And then we will do more of these types of sessions where you can ask questions, and really just to educate everyone and give you guys the tools and resources to be able to build ADUs. All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good night. Bye. Bye, everyone.